Welcome, brothers and sisters. Welcome to this seventh part of this 144 pages counting article written by Randi Green, which is all about social engineering and covert governance. Today's title is a symbiotic threat apparently um, assisting us. So, yeah, this is very interesting. This is in actuality the most interesting part of this whole article, this symbiotic threat beneath apparent assistance. That is the full subtitle. And let us start because it's again 15 pages, counting article reading that I do today. All right, I leave this screen and then I go to screen share so that many of you can read along with me. Okay. A symbiotic threat beneath apparent assistance. While many narratives portray certain insectoid non-human intelligences, NHI, such as the mantid beings or the ant people of ancient lore, as clinical observers, researchers, or even occasional protectors of humanity during times of planetary upheaval. It is essential to question the motivational architecture behind their engagement. And this is also one of the reasons that I got on my heart to share this information with you, to help you to undo yourselves from the veils of deception and illusion that are deliberately instigated through architectural design of narrative control. On the surface, these beings may appear as so-called benevolent or neutral actors positioned along the outer rim of our shared reality field, intervening during crises, sharing limited technologies, or guiding selected individuals through obscure contact scenarios. However, when viewed through a deeper systems-based lens, a more complex and rational field emerges. It is possible that their continued involvement with human civilization is not rooted in altruism or universal ethics, but rather in a long-standing symbiotic interrelation, a kind of energetic dependency that ties their survival or functionality to the continuity of the human energetic and ecological system. In this interpretation, their presence is less about helping a struggling civilization and more about ensuring the survival of a species on which their own viability depends. This interrelation may be understood as a multi-layered energetic exchange, a harvesting or rebalancing of psychic, emotional, or biochemical energies that are uniquely generated by the human biosystem and consciousness field. Just as ants are drawn to a pool of sugar, not out of concern for the sugar's origin, but because of the chemical imperative to gather resources, so too might insectoid non-human intelligence be attracted to human energetic emissions, evolutionary potentials, and biochemical diversity. From this perspective, the observed so-called assistance may in fact be a form of mutable containment or ecological maintenance. Humans are preserved not as an end in themselves, but as a necessary condition for the continuation of certain insectoid realities or planetary functions. These beings, having co-evolved with, or perhaps according to some of their claims, seeded parts of the human genome or subtle anatomy, may have locked themselves um, into a non-linear dependency on the persistence of the human energy architecture, both to the higher and lower dimensional aspects. So, lovely brothers and sisters, please go start asking yourself questions why we are so pushed into this digital system. Why are we so pushed into getting these smack scenes? And start asking yourselves this question. How come that we have seen in 2020 the same script roll out over the entire world? This because the 2020 pandemic was completely, according to Sabrina Wallace, completely driven by AI. And they already had this calculation in the system that if there was resistance, another group of people were already selected to fill in the places of those who refused. Everything, lovely brothers and sisters, was completely staged, as each and every aspect of the propaganda narratives, the news narratives, and every narrative that they are feeding us with are completely, carefully orchestrated and carefully set up to create, you can say, artificial types of chaos, mayhem, and havoc. These beings, having co-evolved with, or perhaps according to some of their claims, seeded parts of the human genome or subtle anatomy, may have locked themselves into a non-linear dependency on the persistence of the human energy architecture, both to the higher and the lower dimensional aspects. Okay, I had to read this again. This does not imply overt malevolence, but rather points to a functional interdependence that humans have yet not fully recognized. The ethical terrain becomes murky when such assistance is received without awareness of its deeper terms. Well, better said, this awareness is deliberately taken away from us. They give us bits and pieces, and then they say to us, oh, figure it out yourselves. Make yourselves all these connectional points through movies, through teleseries, through newspapers, through everything that comes to us through the internet and radio and whatsoever. So they give us bits and pieces, and then they lack us to give the whole picture. Of course they do this. The ethical terrain becomes murky when such assistance is received without awareness of its deeper terms, what might be seen as a subtle concord of energetic reciprocity in NHI language called exchange rate within a specific ratio where the fair is 1-to-1 ratio. Invisible to most of humanity, but fundamental to interspecies interaction. Understanding this hidden architecture allows for a more coherent and mature approach to contact, one that neither demonizes nor romanticizes, but sees with clarity the entire complex entanglement of survival, evolution, and energetic economy that underlies many non-human intelligent human dynamics. So these are factions, groups working with the oligarchs and all those whom are connected with them, and they are all functioning as a puppet on a string for these off-world species. And you should ask yourself this question: why are they doing everything in secrecy, these off-world factions or groupings? So from narrative to structural insight, understanding the Hopi aunt friends through the lens of ontological narrative reframes their actions as more than myth. They represent an early subtle form of civilizational reprogramming wrapped in the language of protection and alliance. Their story is not merely about who helped who in a time of need, but about who shaped the narrative of survival, identity, and belonging, and why. The aunt friends, like other insectoid NHI, seem to participate in a layered reality architecture where direct physical interventions serve to secure deeper, longer-term systemic goals. In this sense, the Hopi alliance with the Ant people marks one of the earliest recorded field-based interactions between human consciousness and multidimensional systemic intelligences. At first glance, these accounts speak to benevolence, survival, and ancient cooperation between species from a system theoretical and ontological perspective. These interactions suggest a more complex matrix of early social engineering, wherein non-human intelligences actively influence the structural development of human civilization, survival behavior, and cosmological worldview. The Aunt Friends did not merely assist the Hopi by offering physical refuge, they also described as educators and keepers of knowledge, transmitting information about time cycles, planetary rhythms, and moral conduct. This transmission of encoded knowledge suggests a deliberate shaping of human perception and collective memory, a curated narrative seed planted during a phase of extreme vulnerability. Such intervention bears the hallmark of social engineering, unintentional restructuring of a species' belief systems, behaviors, and social frameworks to serve a broader interspecies function, which we do not know much about. In this case, it appears the Aunt Friends offer protection not unconditionally, but in exchange for establishing a long-term imprint in the human collective psyche, creating an ontological anchor point that could be reactivated or reverenced in future epochs. While definitive proof remains elusive, these persistent patterns echoed in witness reports, remote viewing data, and classified program claims suggest that covert human governance may not just operate in isolation. Instead, it appears to function as part of a complex web of terrestrial and non-terrestrial interests, where questions of human destiny are negotiated, contested, and sometimes manipulated by intelligences and systems beyond conventional understanding. So, lovely brothers and sisters, we need to ask ourselves these questions: whose slaves are we? And for whom are we really working? Not only for the oligarch families and all those whom are related to them, but also for those whom are manipulating us behind the scenes. So 3.2, understanding the hidden hand. And here comes a very interesting part, and I think this is the most interesting part of the entire article. Oh, sorry, I hope you still hear me. Let me see. Yeah. Understanding the hidden hand, a technocratic and post-human elite. The modern iteration of the hidden hand is no longer characterized by secret councils of aging elites meeting in shadowy rooms to describe the fate of nations. That model, rooted in secrecy, Cold War era intelligence structures, and hierarchical control, dominated the US and its allies for much of, at least, the past 80 years. Today, however, the hidden hand has evolved into something far more diffuse and sophisticated, which is a decentralized, hyper-intelligent global network composed of technocrats, AI-integrated decision-making systems, and transnational power brokers. These actors are embedded within the highest levels of influence across scientific institutions, financial systems, multinational corporations, and global governance frameworks, rather than operating through overt secrecy. The new structure cloaks itself in complexity, bureaucratic opacity, and algorithmic authority. Power is no longer hidden in the shadows, it is dispersed across platforms, interfaces, and automated systems, making it harder to trace, challenge, or hold accountable. Of course, they do this. Why? Because the ruling external and internal powers wanna undo the entire human race of its sovereignty and free will, and thus want us to undo from our God-given abilities and fruits of the Spirit, which is faith and also sovereignty and free will. A self-sustaining intelligence network. And read this sentence along: a self-sustaining intelligence network. In the near future, a new version of the hidden hand will integrate itself into public life under the guise of innovation, so-called crisis management, and so-called global progress. Well, this is already going on since at least 1995, and over the next 10 to 50 years, we will see: one, the complete phasing out of old economic systems replaced by capacity, function, and incentive; two, innovation-driven models; and two, the gradual shift to a hybrid biological, technological human species, eliminating natural selection in favor of engineered selection done through one of the tools such as CRISPR-Cas technology and mRNA vaccines. And now you get to understand why they tried to demand each person of us into this false narrative of the smack scenes, and to have each one of us injected with this mRNA technologies, which is all based on nanotechnologies. Furthermore, we will see a consolidation of knowledge into AI repositories, reducing the need for traditional education and increasing reliance on direct information downloads and a so-called cognitive enhancement technologies functioned as an adaptive intelligence network. This network will span multiple domains and consists of 1. AI-driven decision systems, 2. Private research and development institutions, 3. Multinational corporations, and 4. Strategic influence networks. And all these sub-sentences, you can read them all for yourselves if you download this PDF article for free through the mentioned websites in the text box below this video, which is done through the World Economic Forum, Council on Foreign Relations, and multilateral intelligence alliances, the Five Eyes, and NATO's cyber programs and undisclosed space intelligence collaborations. So now we get to know the real structure of all these organizations, and NATO is no longer defending us. It is working for these off-world factions. Engineering the future human species. The ultimate goal of this modern technocratic elite is not just engineered global moderation and modification, but the directed evolution of humanity into an entirely new species. Yeah, into a synthoid. This means that they want to make us completely synthetic. Not only us, by the way, your pets, so your dogs, your cats, every life form needs to transform into a synthoid. Yeah, this means that all forms of organic life needs to disappear. This is what they want. They are killing off all natural life forms. They do not want that life is being sustained by natural life, as mentioned by the creator and source of the living light and life itself. This transition is being guided by their non-human intelligence collaborators, all these groupings, factions, who see Earth as a testing ground for new biological and genetic cybernetic templates. So, lovely brothers and sisters, this raises the questions: for how long are we as human species guinea pigs? And there are already many people in this world who came already to this understanding that Earth is nothing more than a petri dish, and each and every life form in this petri dish is a guinea pig, no matter human, animal, tree, plant, whatever. The hidden hand operating as the non-human intelligence intermediaries has played a crucial role in facilitating these experiments, ensuring that evolutionary advancements align with a broader interstellar agenda beyond the scope of human comprehension. These genetic-cybernetic templates are not for Earth's inhabitants, but are prototypes for bioengineered life to support and trade to other planetary systems, which we do not know who these other planetary systems are. Are they benevolent? Are they malevolent? What will it be? And so this also raises the questions, lovely brothers and sisters, What have they done with the DNA that came through these PCR testings? And what are they doing with our DNA that we give freely when we go uh, to the hospital for operations, when we need to do some blood tests and whatever. So ask yourselves these questions. Where optimized genetic structures and cybernetic enhancements allow for greater adaptability in varied environments. Some of its primary methods include neurocognitive and psychotronic engineering. According to Miss Sabrina Wallace, this is already going on for at least 45 years, which is all based on behavior modification through brain-machine interfaces, targeted neurological influences. Um, for example, Havana syndrome research and controlled dreamscaping techniques. So, lovely brothers and sisters, your dreams are not trustworthy anymore. Smart cities and digital enclaves, so-called self-sustaining AI managed environments where populations are monitored and optimized. According to Sabrina Wallace, these smart cities are in actuality managed by our digital twin. And that not everything that is mentioned as AI is in actuality AI, but in actuality is our digital twin. So, lovely brothers and sisters, it is about time that you look up for yourselves and inform yourselves in what is a digital twin. And therefore, I point you to the Odyssey channel of Sabrina Wallace, or the Rumble channel of Non-Vaxxer 420, because they have very interesting videos about this. Then biotechnological eugenics is also going on for at least 45 years. The old version of selective breeding is obsolete. Instead, gene editing through CRISPR-Cas technology, also the non-human intelligence, hybridization, and biophotonic enhancement programs create a post-human species tailored for future planetary expansion. This biophotonic enhancement, they are also doing this, and I think this is also being rolled out already. And then we have as last synthetic governance. Here it comes, synthetic governance. Nation states are becoming obsolete. Instead, economic hubs, corporate governed city-states, and decentralized AI or twin, digital twin-driven political models will shape future governance. The modern hidden hand does not control governments, it makes them irrelevant. So we have no longer a say in anything. That's why I'm saying stop voting, because this whole voting system is already completely corrupted, take over, infiltrated, and absolutely not trustable anymore. When the experiment ends, we have 5 pages to go. While the system may seem stable for several centuries, history has shown again and again that every great controlled civilization eventually collapses. This is interesting because this could explain what many brothers and sisters already are concluding, that this earth has had several resets. The future world governance model will function for about 150 to 500 years, after which its tightly controlled structures will crack under internal resistance and or external unknown variables. Well, let this crackdown start by us humans choosing the path of natural organic evolution instead of the path that they are pushing us further into. This is recognized by the non-human intelligence and some groups within the hidden hand due to insights into the prospective futures of Earth. The collapse will begin its process after an existential crisis of the hybrid human species, and these hybrid human species are already among us, where the future world governance model is rejected, leading to a massive conflict between controlled and independent minds using advanced technology to gain territory. This is followed by a catastrophic technological war where weaponized AI and post-human factions turn on each other, leading to a complete collapse into non-viable entropy. For now, the rollout of this system is in progress, and let us resist and choose for the organic natural path of evolution. The non-human intelligence influences ensures that resistance is minimal using dream state manipulations. Wow. So again, your dreams are not trustworthy any longer. They weren't already. Neurological conditioning and targeted elimination programs for disruptive individuals. That is why they were so pushing to have many of us in taking this smack scene. They brought to us as a so-called magical solution. The key choice for humanity, the key choice for humanity is whether to embrace an organic evolutionary process or in which they are using technology wisely and only for the highest good of the many, or is humanity going to choose to submit to a fully engineered, predetermined path? Well, if I were you, I would choose for the first one, and this is to embrace an organic evolutionary process. This is why outlining the alternative vision, i.e. one rooted in conscious self-evolution, free will, and higher order awareness is crucial. Then we go to point 3.3, the shift in the hidden hand dynamics. The world stands at the precipice of a major transformation, a shift more profound than mere political cycles or economic downturns. The post-World War II global order, long dominated by the United States as the Western superpower, is unraveling. The transatlantic alliance, which once served as the cornerstone of Western stability, is undergoing a significant reconfiguration as the US increasingly turns inward under the influence of the so-called MAGA movement. And MAGA seems also to revert to a ancient so-called God. Washington is stepping back from its historical role as a guarantor of multilateral cooperation. Nationalists' policies now take precedence over international commitments, and the old model of transatlantic integration is giving way to a more transactional interest driven framework. Yet, in this period of destabilization, a temporary recalibration has emerged in July of this year, 2025. The US and Europe finalized a high stakes trade and investment agreement intended to preserve strategic cooperation. And this is something they didn't told us, at least economically, while framed as so-called historic reset. The agreement reflects a pragmatic pivot rather than a renewal of shared values. It imposes a 15% baseline tariff on most European exports to the US, while granting the European zero tariff access on selected American goods, including semiconductors, aircraft parts, and, of course, pharmaceuticals. As part of this deal, the European Union committed to purchasing $750 billion in US energy over the next 3 years and $600 billion in new investments into the American economy by 2028. European so-called leaders also indicated a willingness to procure significant amounts of US military equipment, though details remain vague and politically sensitive, of course. This fragile arrangement has temporarily stabilized transatlantic relations, but it reveals the deeper underlying trend, a retreat from shared governance and a move toward managed interdependence under competitive conditions. The old solidarity of the alliance has been replaced by negotiated dependency. In this evolving landscape, the United States and Europe relationship is no longer based on mutual vision, but on a strategic convenience, carefully calibrated to ensure continuity of power amidst systemic upheaval. Then we go to Augustus' playbook and the unexpected shift. History is often cyclical, with power structures adapting and utilizing past templates to new global conditions. Among the most studied and replicated models is the transformation of the Roman Republic into an empire under Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus. His reign did more than inaugurate an imperial era. It produced a durable template for elite-driven systemic transformation, one that would echo through centuries of Western governance models. Augustus became the first Roman emperor not through brute force alone, but by mastering the art of controlled transition. He consolidated power, reformed governance, and established a hybrid system that preserved the outward forms of the republic while embedding absolute control within a newly centralized imperial structure, and key features of his transformation include centralization of power, institutional reforms, and Pax Romana, or better known, the Roman peace, myth and legitimacy. So these strategies were not merely tools of power retention, they became part of a civilizational algorithm. Augustus' reign represents a crystallization point where elite understanding of socio-political engineering matured into a replicable framework. This framework has been quietly adapted in later eras by transnational elites who study history not merely as a record, but as an operational manual. So while Augustus may not have envisioned a long-planned restructuring of human civilization in the way today's strategists and technocrats do, his reign has become a foundational case study in elite-directed transformation. The mechanisms he used: narrative management. So, brothers and sisters, this is very important. So, the mechanisms he used, and this is how old the game is. Narrative management, which we see outplayed on daily basis. Pseudo-democratic continuity, institutional overhaul, and psychological legitimacy have informed many of the hidden structures governing modernity. In fact, elements of the Augustus playbook can be seen in today's geopolitical strategies, particularly within the post-World War II Western order, controlled transitions of power, ceremonial democracies, masking corporate and/or military dominance, media-engineered consent, and the use of crisis to justify centralization. The current shifts toward AI-managed governance, decentralized technocratic networks, and narrative-based legitimacy show that the deeper principles of the Augustan model remain alive, if more sophisticated in their digital expression. And then the shift in the playbook. When Donald Trump rose to power, factions within the American branch of the transnational hidden hand sought to position him as a modern Augustus, a figure who would dismantle the decaying structure of the old liberal democratic order and usher in a new phase of centralized control, with the United States positioned as the dominant civilizational core. This plan drew heavily from historical precedents, particularly the consolidation strategies employed by Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus, who reshaped the Roman Republic into an empire through a combination of, here it comes, propaganda, institutional reform, and a carefully managed illusion of traditional governance. However, the geopolitical terrain of the 21st century is vastly different from that of ancient Rome. Global interconnectedness, emerging technologies, environmental instability, and the rise of multipolar power centers make any attempts to replicate the Augustus model inherently unstable, the factions attempting to utilize Trump as the linchpin of a controlled transition underestimated both the volatility of modern systems and Trump's own resistance to acting as a scripted figurehead. Rather than following the long-planned strategy of incremental transformation through soft disclosure of advanced technologies, cultural conditioning, and global governance. Restructuring Trump's administration took a divergent path. His presidency, largely driven by religious prosperity doctrine and nationalist ideology, did not adhere to the secretive frameworks, occulted affiliations, or globalist timelines that the transnational, elite had been cultivating for decades. So the machinery of disclosure designed to gradually shift humanity's paradigm was instead met with hostility and or neglect. The worldview underpinning Trump's faction, particularly evident in the ideological contours of Project 2025, reframes power not as a vehicle for civilizational regeneration, but as a divine right bestowed upon the faithful and wealthy. In this theology, prosperity signals divine favor, and governing becomes an exercise in rewarding the so-called chosen, rather than reforming civilization for the collective good. This has created a severe disconnect between the long arc of global restructuring and the short-term transactional logic of Trump's governing style. Most American voters that backed Trump and beyond remain unawares of this ideological divergence. And now, lovely brothers and sisters, are you coming to understand what is truly going on behind the scenes in the so-called American politics? And now you get to understand why the source and creator of the living light and life has asked me to present you this information to help you to get a deeper understanding. And please share this information. Many believe they are reclaiming a lost public. This is a false belief, but they are unawares of this false belief, of this illusion, of this deception, unawares that they are instead being populist, being led, into a new theocratic capitalist configuration of power. So these people need to wake up that they are being led into this new theocratic capitalist configuration of power. An updated feudalism cloaked in populist language. As a result, the United States is no longer following the trajectory originally intended by the transnational architects of systemic transformation, what was meant to be a carefully managed reorganization of planetary civilization, positioning the United States as the prime mover has now devolved into fragmentation, internal infighting, and a dramatic loss of narrative control. And because of this, we need to take this as a positive thing so that we have time to resist in this and no longer go along with all these plans. And as last, a calculated disruption, or at first glance, it may seem counterintuitive that factions within the hidden hand, a network known for long-term strategic planning and covert governance, would select or tolerate a figure as volatile and populist as Trump. Yet a closer examination reveals several speculative motivations that clarify this move. Trump functions as a disruptive candidate, an outsider possessing enough cultural capital to catalyze institutional upheaval without necessarily understanding or even intending to uphold the complex machinery he was destabilizing. From a system theory perspective, he acts as a shock factor, a force capable of collapsing, decaying structures precisely because he is not beholden to their internal logic. His unpredictability and outsider status make him a powerful agent of entropy within the established US-centric global order. Additionally, Trump's wealth-based appeal and ideological alignment with prosperity theology creates a bridge between traditional Christian dominionism and modern capitalist authoritarianism. This fusion is seen as useful in stabilizing an emergent theoretic capitalist power bloc seeking to consolidate control through both religious and economic narratives. Moreover, Trump's unique personality, simultaneously charismatic, erratic, yet fiercely loyal to those who support his image, rendered him an ideal vehicle for factions desiring accelerated a systematic breakdown without immediately replacing the old order. His role is less about constructing a new political architecture, and more about clearing the stage for what comes next. An Augustus without a Pax Romana, a Caesar without an heir. Nevertheless, this backing by the hidden hand appears to have been a calculated gamble rather than an expression of deep psychological insight. It is plausible that they anticipate his disruptive function to be primarily concentrated in the first 2 years of his tenure, to unsettle entrenched power systems and hasten systemic entropy before transitioning authority to a more stable figure, such as the so-called vice president. This strategy will leverage Trump's volatile charisma as a catalytic force without requiring him to provide sustained governance or strategic coherence. However, the unpredictability inherent in this plan, compounded by factors such as aging leadership within these factions and their shifting internal dynamics, will most likely necessitate adjustments mid-course between the period of 2026 and 2027. If this is the case, Trump's position can be viewed less as that of a long-term architect of change and more as a transient agent of upheaval within a broader multi-phase agenda seeking to reshape global power structures. And then as last, a network of factions within a shared arc. At this point in the process of understanding, we must not overlook that the hidden hand is not a monolithic entity, but a complex constellation of several factions and groupings, each with its own priorities, ideologies, and methods. While these groups often appear unified in their overarching goals, maintaining control, steering global events, and managing the transition toward a new world order, they are internally divided by differing visions of how this future should unfold and who should ultimately hold power. So this means that they are striving to have power over Earth. And so this Earth will then come into the hands of a faction of which we have no history of whom they are, what they are, and what they want with us to do. This factionalism is both a strength and a source of tension. Operating within a shared ideological arc, the factions agree broadly on the necessity of maintaining secrecy, leveraging advanced technologies, and using social engineering to shape human civilization. Yet, their interpretations of the ideal governance model, economic structures, and social protocols, can vary significantly. Some may favor technocratic rule guided by AI and specialized elites. Others are more overtly authoritarian or theocratic framework, and still others a hybridized system blending multiple approaches. These divisions mean that rather than a single unified so-called world governance machine. So this is what it is all about, a world governance machine, executing a fixed plan in which our vote is not being asked, in which we had no say in it at all. What we observe is a dynamic process of negotiation, competition, and recalibration behind closed doors. Each faction actively engineers its preferred ideology and seeks to influence the direction of secret governance. This interplay produces both cooperation when interests align and conflict when competing agendas clash or power balances shift. Understanding the hidden hand as a network of competing factions, groupings, operating within a shared but flexible framework highlights the complexity of covert governance. It explains why certain initiatives advance while others stall or fail, why sudden shifts in strategy occur, and why the global power landscape remains volatile despite decades of apparent control. In essence, the hidden hand is less a singular architect of destiny and more a contested arena where divergent visions of future governance compete under a veil of secrecy. Each faction/group attempting to imprint its ideology on the evolving structure of global power without our consent in this. Okay, lovely brothers and sisters, I have come to the end of reading these 15 pages. Tomorrow I continue with the new generation of the hidden hand, challenging the established order. All right, I leave screen share and I go to this. All right, the last thing I want to say is, brothers and sisters, please share all these videos about this topic, social engineering and covert governance. As more as possible, people need to know all this information. It is not without a reason that I'm sharing this. We need to know this so that we can understand the real background behind all the controlled narratives that they are injecting us with. Yeah, that they are spewing onto us. So share all this information. Download this free PDF about this information. Share it with as many as possible, brothers and sisters. We need to inform ourselves, okay? And do not go along any longer with all these millions of controlled narratives deliberately created to distract us, to derail us, and to have us in this constant form of confusion, chaos, mayhem, havoc, hate against one another, and so on, so on. As last, I'm going to the end of this online article reading. And as last, I want to say thank you so much for listening and reading along with me. I wish you all a beautiful and joyful day filled with discernment, truth, love, and wisdom. And please give ministry to your fellow brothers and listen to a beautiful piece of music and sound. Lucy sound. See you tomorrow. God bless you.